On this edition of Multiverse News, Ahsoka is airing today. Disney surprises with Percy Jackson show date. The Flash comes to Max while Blue Beetle beats Barbie and Gunn talks more Superman. Plus, the Monsterverse returns with more Godzilla. That news and more awaits you after this. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name is J. Scotty St. Clair, sitting in for Matthew Carroll, and it is truly an episode of Multiverse News. We are embracing the multiverse and the variants. Happy to be here, and I am joined by a lovely cast of characters here, starting with Haley Hobbs from Source Pages. What's up, Haley?
What's up? Ahsoka's today. That's all that matters. Moving on.
All right, and Jay Sisson from Commute the Podcast. What's happening, Jay?
I'm doing great. Yeah, Haley's like checking her watch constantly. Like, when is this gonna be over? Like, I gotta get to Ahsoka. Like,
we gotta speed it up tonight, guys.
For sure.
The shortest episode of Multiverse News in history.
And making his return to Multiverse News, Jeff Randall. Welcome back, Jeff.
I beg to differ on shortest episode. This is actually going to be the longest episode because I'm here.
The gauntlet has been thrown.
We're ready for all this Percy Jackson takes, and we're just gonna draw this thing out.
I just have a tendency to be a touch long-winded and maybe derail things.
Never.
Me?
That's why we love you, Jeff.
Is it?
You know.
That's why we love you on your podcast.
Sure.
Not this one.
Fair enough. All right, well, with that, keeping in mind that we do have Ahsoka airing very soon, we'll go ahead and get rocking and rolling with a story about Ahsoka. In a surprising move, the Ahsoka live-action series 2-episode premiere was moved from Wednesday, August 23rd to, well, pretty much right now, August 22nd at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Disney has been pushing this show with TV spots, trailers, ads, interviews, and more in a way that feels more intentional than some of their previous properties. Why the bump for the highly anticipated show? And is Haley going to blip out to watch it soon?
I wanted nothing more than for my screen to go blank and for there to be like an off-air tone playing. I love that. It would have been so funny. I have to wait anyway to watch tonight, so we'll get there. But I've been fascinated by Disney's approach to marketing this show. Ahsoka was introduced back in 2008 in the Clone Wars movie. She was not a well-received character. Flash forward all these years, she's one of the most beloved characters in the franchise. And so we know that Dave Filoni created her with George Lucas and that she's, definitely something he holds close to his heart. So with him and Jon Favreau at the helm, I think that they're really wanting to make this show a huge event leading towards his Mandoverse movie that's going to come out in the future. And I think we're going to see just, really wild stuff in this show that maybe a lot of Star Wars fans haven't seen before. If you haven't watched the animated stuff, which is totally fine, they say that you don't have to have watched it to see the show. If you want to know about Rebels, though, check out Animation Deliberation. Some cool people did a breakdown on that show. Me, Sue Hare. But yeah, I don't know why they bumped the time of the release either. It made me think of our discussion last week when we talked about streaming and network TV. This is kind of airing like at a network TV time. And so it's challenging for me schedule-wise, but it's probably a good thing for fans who don't want to be spoiled. A lot of us didn't wake up at 2 a.m. like Jeff and Matt do for stuff.
Listen.
Those guys, heroes to all. And so I wish we would get to know, and maybe we will, kind of what the reception of this is, how it goes.
Yeah.
This is, like we've talked about before, Disney Plus, like playing with the streaming formula and kind of seeing what works.
I'm honestly kind of worried about it, to be honest, because the recent announcements of like the WandaVision DVD and the Loki DVDs being out there, and then they're moving this show to come out on primetime. Like if the Disney Plus thing was working, they'd stick with it. They'd stick with exactly what's working. But like now they're changing it, and then they're releasing stuff on hard copy. Disney Plus might not be long for this world. I don't want to put that out there. I'm sorry, but I'm scared.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And my first thought kind of went to the same space when you talk about these physical releases we're getting, but I actually looked at the ones that have been confirmed, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves in terms of talking about these physical releases, but I do think it all kind of ties together, and it's Loki, it's WandaVision, and it's The Mandalorian, and like those are far and away some of the best received Disney Plus series. I think it's Andor is kind of the anomaly there, but maybe it hasn't been out quite long enough that they kind of want to milk their ability to continue having streaming be the primary way that people see that. But Haley, you brought up a really interesting point about like this schedule shift taking place basically at network TV time. And I hadn't really picked up on that, but I think that's pretty astute, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I do think in terms of kind of like the buzz and fever pitch and anticipation that's happening around the series, like I feel it more so than I have for any series in a really long time. Like Secret Invasion, sure, people were excited for that, but I even like the most recent season of The Mandalorian. Like I don't feel like people had the same level of excitement and anticipation that we have for Ahsoka. And, I am one of those people, like I have not watched Rebels, and, everything I'm hearing that this is basically, from Dave Filoni's mouth that it's Rebels season 5. I'm going into it with an open mind and hoping that all, enough will be there for me to pick up on the characters that I am familiar with. I've been exposed to a fair amount of Rebel stories through The Bad Batch and some of the episodes of the Clone Wars I have seen. I have started to see a few reviews come out that are like spoiler free, and they do seem to be all over the place. Like some people are saying if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, like this is for you. Other people saying, there's not enough hand holding there if you're not familiar with these characters. But the through line that has been, consistent across the board is that the production design and the money that they put into this is clearly there. And like that trailer that we got, I think really showcases that. So I'm pretty excited for this one. And I do think in terms of like experimenting with release strategies, even though this one was last minute and kind of caught us with our pants down, I think it makes more sense than something like Echo being released all at once, just doing something so entirely different. Like this feels like more of a vote of confidence, where Echo's release strategy feels like, okay, let's just get this out of the way.
I actually kind of love this as a release strategy, and it's because I never watch the shows at 2 a.m. I always have to do it in the evening anyway. I would see it from the perspective of somebody who like maybe works from home and wants to catch it in the afternoon, or someone who goes to work a little bit later and wants to catch it in the morning or whatever, and they've kind of gotten used to that with Star Wars and Marvel. For me, like I love the idea of event television. If you are trying to capture that sort of HBO high point like Game of Thrones, and if you're trying to capture kind of what they were doing with Succession, what AMC was doing years ago with like Mad Men and Breaking Bad, where you're hitting it on the weekend, you're hitting it at a high point, millions of people are tuning in, and then the water cooler starts the next day. That's really what you're really trying to aim for here if you're Disney. And to me, I think this show, probably more than most, I mean, especially if The Mandalorian ends up getting another season, you're probably looking at a lot of potential for that, to be able to do that. And as someone who personally has an axe to grind with Simu Liu, because he spoiled Luke Skywalker's reveal in The Mandalorian at 6 a.m, the day after it was released, I'm totally fine with, doing this event style. Which, look, don't come for me, by the way, on, like, stay off social media. Well, were you on social media? Like, okay, just whatever, okay? It was 6 a.m, okay?
How dare you disparage the name of Shang-Chi?
Sounds like Jay wants to beach off right now.
Hey, I went and saw Shang-Chi, okay? I still gave my money, all right? But, like, the whole time I was like, he did it. He spoiled that for me. I could have had a moment, and I didn't have it because of you.
For sure.
Could have been your
doing
villain
such
turn.
a great job in this movie. I can't be mad at him.
This is my villain origin story.
Right.
But it was okay. Can I revisit the fact that it was 6 a.m? Like, why did he tweet that at 6 a.m? Okay, go ahead. Let's.
Maybe he'd been raging all night, yo.
You kind of feel like that new Spider-Man villain, The Spot. My villain origin story is because you threw a bagel at my head. Like, seemingly you threw a bagel at your head. Is what happened.
Figuratively speaking, he did.
Literally speaking, he just missed. But he got you with the tweet.
I love that. All right, moving on. We're still staying in the Disney Plus realm of things, talking about a new series. Beloved young adult book series Percy Jackson and the Olympians is coming to Disney Plus this December. The media Megazoid released a trailer on Monday to hype the 2-episode premiere starting December 20th. The Percy Jackson books are beloved by fans worldwide, but this release has been kept fairly quiet until now. Does Disney have another hit series on its hands, or will the gods have to work to make us like it?
So, after those two movies, there's a bit of a loss of faith in the live action Percy Jackson brand. For me especially. Like, I read all of the books and absolutely loved them. I'm actually probably just going to go back and read them again. I'm big Rick Riordan fan. But the trailer that they released, that they put out to the world, looks pretty solid based on like what I had in my head when I was reading, because we all make the pictures in our head and everything.
Right.
The problem with the first, like with the movie, The Lightning Thief, and then the subsequent Sea of Monsters, is like they took like inspiration from the books and then didn't really stay true to them in any way, and like they didn't do anything to like lay the foundation for a larger verse or a larger story. They were just like, one and done, cool, good enough. And I think that they've taken a bit more of a key from Marvel, DC, etc. That like, and especially in the Harry Potter, because that's kind of what I equate this most to, with it being kind of a kid's series and fantastical. It's like, no, these people really want to see like a true to the story kind of long form take on this particular story, or really any story that they grew up reading. And I think that this one definitely has it's got the meat in the story to keep it going. And then based on the like 30 seconds of trailer that I saw, I'm like, holy crap, that's the beach scene! He's gonna fight Ares! Like, things that had not happened in the movie before that may happen in the series. Like, it's giving me hope. It's giving me a lot of hope.
Okay.
Jess in the chat says that this is her most anticipated Disney Plus show, and that Rick Riordan is heavily involved in the series. So I put this in main stories because the response I saw online was huge. I haven't read these books. They're now on my to-be-read list because I think it'd be fun to cover it over on source pages. But yeah, I was like, this is clearly a really important book series to a lot of people. And I remember the movies not being received well. So hopefully this rectifies that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I saw the first film, and I don't remember anything about it other than it had Logan Lerman in it. That is all I remember about it. But in terms of this trailer, I honestly think, Jeff, your analysis and like hearing about this like fervor and buzz that there is amongst the fandom, like that's what excites me more than anything. This trailer didn't really do it for me as someone that has not been exposed to this stuff like at all. I was a little confused with like who the title character was. Like, I guess I could make an educated guess that like of the lineup of these three heroes we have standing there, I probably know which one Percy Jackson is. But in terms of like the camera placement and everything, like he just did not seem like he featured prominently. So I found myself scratching my head a little bit at that. But one of the things I did learn about reading up about it is that the late Lance Reddick is going to make an appearance as Zeus. So I'm super excited to continue to get work from that incredible legend of an actor there. But I wanted to ask a question, and hopefully it doesn't get too spoilery here. If it's too spoilery, just let me know. We can shut it down. But do these books, like, do they stay in the realm or like in the Greek pantheon, or do they explore with other pantheons? Because like that's where I find myself, like the possibilities there is what kind of excites me a little bit more. So
I love that you asked that. Okay. Rick Riordan did like this group of novels. The Percy Jackson series is all based in the Greek pantheon.
Okay.
There's also the Trials of Apollo that are based in the Greek pantheon. There is another series called The Legacy of Cain that is based in Egyptian mythology. Okay. And like there was a very specific part in the first book where like one of the main characters looks across, sees like the Empire State Building like over in New York, and like could have sworn I saw a black Pegasus flying through the clouds.
Oh wow. Okay.
And like very much tied to events of like I think it's the 4th or 5th book of Percy Jackson. And then like one of the mentors or whatever is like, oh no, there's different gods handle that side. Like
interesting.
We don't have to go over there. And then the lead female character of the Percy Jackson series, Annabeth Chase, her cousin is Magnus Chase, and he's the lead of a Norse mythology set trilogy. And like he goes through so many different pantheons, and it's like it's so cool to see how like all of those can be linked and kind of like an old gods, new gods, what's metaphysical, maybe they're just all aliens kind of thing.
Hey, careful with that new gods talk. That's DC, and I know how you feel about
DC. My bad.
I did go look like how many Percy Jackson and the Olympians books are there. There are 6, but what I think is interesting is that there is one coming out next month, September 26th, 2023. So this is still an active book series. There are still books being written. The universe is still expanding through the written word, and it'll be interesting to see that take on I guess the small screen on a series, but still with a series you have a lot more ability to explore the world, and you're not as hamstrung by what a film can do. So I think that's an interesting component to it. This isn't a series that has been. I kind of expected, like I knew that they have been around for a while. I was like, well, this series probably wrapped 4 or 5 years ago, but no, it's still going.
Now the last Olympian was the last book or whatever for the Percy Jackson series original. The book that's coming out, next year is like kind of an add-on sequel-ish type of thing. Just they completed the main story, so to speak. So it's not necessarily that like the story is continuing, but like the world is definitely still being expanded upon. And I love that it's kind of this like living universe that we get to influence and see come to fruition.
Definitely. Yeah. Sounds awesome. All right, so we've talked about Star Wars, we've talked about Greek gods. Now it's time to talk about DC.
New gods, like we said.
Right. With Blue Beetle in theaters and beating Barbie out of its 4-week top spot domination, fans of DC have been overwhelmingly positive about the new superhero movie featuring relatively unknown hero Jaime Reyes as Blue Beetle, portrayed by Cobra Kai actor Xolo Mariduena. Its fellow hero movie, The Flash, will premiere on Max next week. There was a lot of talk about comparing the two movies, but Blue Beetle seems to be distinguishing itself as fresh. And of course, we have James Gunn news. Talking to Threads in response to a fan who asked about his upcoming Young Superman movie, Gunn responded, "I was never making a Young Superman movie, just a Superman movie." This seems to contrast with a statement Gunn made online in December on the recast of Superman, which read, "In the initial stages of our story, we will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life, so the character will not be played by Henry Cavill." What do we say? Or what say we, rather?
There's so much there to talk about. Like, the DC brand is in such a strange transitionary place, and this Blue Beetle, I know the way it led was Blue Beetle's #1 at the box office. It beat Barbie, and while that is technically true, Barbie was in its 4th or 5th week, and Blue Beetle barely beat Barbie. All right, we're talking like $2 million or something. Like, it was barely. So we'll talk numbers later. I think that's a lightning round topic later. But this is not good. Like, the movie is being well received. People are liking it. Like, it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. But like, to only scrape together $24 million or whatever domestically in your opening weekend, to have $100 million budget or so, and you would only assume that those numbers will have a pretty steep drop-off. Like, most of the fans have gone out and seen it right now, right? What you're hoping for, if you're DC, is that the word of mouth can get going and people can kind of keep talking about it and encourage more people to go to the theater. But we've kind of seen history here. Like, I know The Flash was not as well received. A lot of people didn't like it, so that makes sense that it dropped off. But people, I'm comparing it more to Shazam 2, right? Which people liked, and people said, go see this. This is fun. This is good. And, it performed pretty poorly, too. Actually, Shazam even performed better. It was kind of a disaster in its opening weekend, and it performed better than Blue Beetle. It's like DC's like, remember when we had that Shazam money? Like, it's not good for the brand here. And it's for a lot of different reasons. I think you can attribute some of it to the strike. That's what Hollywood's going to do. They're going to say it's the strike. Sure. We can't get our talent out there. We can't promote it. And I think that's probably true to a degree. I don't think it's going to affect it by huge numbers or anything like that. Past that, I think the public never really accepted this as part of this DC reboot. And I know James Gunn was very mostly firm about, yes, this is DCU, this is a new character, but I just don't think the public bought that, like he sort of put it out there. And now, if you're James Gunn, and I haven't talked about the Superman stuff yet, but like, if you're James Gunn, you're in such a weird place, because what do you do now? Like, you stumped real hard for this movie. You put it out there. You're like, we want to make this a DCU character. Are you going to go to Warner Brothers now and be like, can I make a Blue Beetle 2? Like, they're going to be like, no, you can't make a Blue Beetle 2. Like, we lost, $50 million or whatever on Blue Beetle. So it's so messy, it's so complicated, and also I'll say this real quick, and then I'll let you guys get in because I'm talking too long. But like, the only reason that we think it's a young Superman movie is because James Gunn said it was a young Superman movie. Like, somebody tweeted at him 4 months ago. They were like, hey man, what do you got against Henry Cavill? And he was like, well, we're just taking. It's going to be about the early stages of Superman's life, so that's why it's not Henry Cavill. So, like, come on now, like, you told us that. So, like, don't get mad when we're like, what's the deal with young Superman? You're like, I'm not making a young Superman. So I don't know, man.
Earlier part of his life, not young, just early
Younger.
Superman.
Yeah,
It's not young Superman; it's early Superman.
You already got the director of Blue Beetle out there, by the way, just being like, well, when we get to make Blue Beetle 2 and Blue Beetle 3, like, he's doubling down on the James Gunn promised me thing, and the James Gunn promised me group is getting pretty big. You got Gal in there, you got the director of Blue Beetle, James Gunn. Maybe just take a few weeks off, I guess.
Oh, come on. You're not looking forward to Two Beetle, Too Furious?
Oh, I liked Blue Beetle.
Oh, and I'm not crapping on the movie. I gotta just say, like, I'm not crapping on it. I'm not crapping on it. Like,
You're part of the problem.
I'm so happy if you liked it. It's just, this is such a bad first weekend. Like, it just is.
But Jay, you and I talked over the weekend. I said this was supposed to be direct to streaming originally, right?
Yeah,
and you said yeah. And so, what's the like, what was it gonna make, quote unquote, on Max if they hadn't put it out in the theater? So would they be taking $100 million loss instead of a $75 million loss? And I think it's gonna get a little more. I don't think it's gonna obviously make what they spent on it, but how do you quantify that? We don't know how streaming services are quantifying these direct-to-streaming movies. It's kind of like, is it the rotisserie chicken at Costco or these loss leaders to get people in? You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's just something that we don't know because they're not sharing that information.
Yeah.
We're going to get them in with Blue Beetle, and we'll keep them for the How It's Made 24 seasons.
It was part of that Batgirl era, like, where they were like, we're going to make some Max movies, and they're going to connect to the DCU, and Michael Keaton's going to be in them, and he's going to kind of be like Tony or Nick Fury or whatever, and he's going to assemble all these characters and all that. Well, then we know what happened to Batgirl, R.I.P. And Blue Beetle, though, they looked at it and they were like, this is actually a good movie. Like, we should do something with this. And then they kept making it happen. So being caught in between two worlds, like, I don't think it affected it that much story-wise. Like, it seems like people like it. It's just, but I think it does affect it image-wise. Like, I think people have been hearing about this movie for a couple years now, and they're looking at it and saying, wait, so this is new DC or whatever, and man, we got one more left. We just got Aquaman coming down the pike. And it's like,
I don't want to talk about Aquaman.
Yeah, me either.
I will say, and I won't spoil anything, this is a DCU. This could be a DCU only movie.
It could also not be.
Could also not be, but
yeah.
Did you see it, Scotty?
I did. Okay. And I've been cautiously optimistic about Blue Beetle. I was rooting for Blue Beetle. And I, even with that being the case, I couldn't help but kind of, have some fears, and justifiable fears apparently, that it was kind of dead on arrival. And I think the one saving grace is that, I like what you bring up about, like, had it been just released on Max, what does that return on investment look like? And I think the one saving grace here is that it had, for a superhero movie, it had a pretty moderate budget. I think it came in right around $100 million. So, a $25 million opening weekend is still really soft and not great, but kind of to your point, Jay, hopefully, the positivity and the fact that it's fresh, like the word of mouth grows. And, my takeaway is I enjoyed the movie. I do think it borrowed a lot from a lot of superhero movies we've already seen, but Xolo Mariduena was the standout, and I really hope that just like, having this vehicle, if anything, it just affords him more career opportunities. But the other thing that's been discussed here is like James Gunn, and I think part of the like lack of interest for Blue Beetle here, and I also like imagine if this had opened like other than like in July instead of August, like it wouldn't have even beat Barbie. So it would have been a complete and total disaster. So, but talking about DC as like this tarnished brand, I think James Gunn is kind of contributing to that at this point. Like you talking about this camp of growing people that are like, James Gunn told me this, James Gunn told me that. And yeah, he's totally going back on his words. Maybe the word young Superman was not used verbatim, but it was our understanding that this is going to be a fresh-faced Superman early on in his career. So like, it kind of reminds me of when I was in boot camp for the Navy, like everybody like like came in and was like, my recruiter lied to me. And it just kind of feels like that, like James Gunn lied to me to just get me here.
But James Gunn promised me.
You know the meme of the girl that like the house is on fire behind her and she's like evil looking at the camera? Like that is Jeff right now. Like he is like DC burns like no every time he's like laughing his head off back there.
No, I'm laughing because like so I want DC to do well because the rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah,
if they make good things, then that's going to push Marvel to not make another Secret Invasion ending. I mean, everybody's going to make good things because the quality bar is raised. But then when you've got like the studio is saying one thing, this director saying another thing, who's actually leading, who's driving the thing, and everybody's saying James Gunn promised me, like when there's no faith in the brand from the end user, so to speak, the common viewer. I couldn't think of anything other than end user because I'm a tech guy, whatever. But when there's no faith in the brand from somebody like me who's just on the street, like, I've already got a Max subscription that I'm borrowing. I'll just catch it when it comes to Max kind of thing. Like, That's such an easy thing for people to do when, like, there's not really any faith from everybody being like, oh, this is the start of the whole big thing. Like, big things are coming and this is a great beginning to it. That might have gotten me to go and see it. But, like, the brand faith is gone. And honestly, like, the brand faith in DC has been kind of crumbly for a while, but they do occasionally have good things come out. And, like, when they do, I'm excited for them. And I had a post in the Stranded Panda chat at one point where I was like, I'm so happy for you guys. And everybody thought I was sarcastic as hell. But I was like, no, I'm actually genuinely excited that you guys got a movie that you like, that you got what you wanted out of it. And, like, I want that for Blue Beetle too. And, like, with you guys saying it's good, I'm like, oh God, but, like, do I want to waste the money? Or is it a waste though? But, like, do I want to spend the money? And, like, if I spend the money, then that puts my faith in the brand and then maybe, but does my $12 count?
You can go see it on Sunday for like $4 if you want.
You bring something up, Jeff, that, again, the streaming and the network and the physical media of it all, like, if we didn't have Max, if this was always going to be a theatrical release, people would flock to go see it because that's your only option. And to your point, like, is Disney Plus going to go away? Like, are the streamers thinking, maybe we did too much of a good thing for too long?
Yeah, we've kind of talked about Pixar as being like a studio that has kind of trained their audience to watch their releases on Disney Plus, that people just don't really go to the theater to watch Pixar anymore and take their whole family and spend all of that money and looking at Disney Plus and saying, well, this is going to be here in 3 months. Why would I not watch it at home? From the comfort of my home on Disney Plus, and the audience has been trained to do that, and I think DC is going through something similar. Like, I bet this movie will do awesome when it hits Max. I bet it'll hit the top of the streaming charts. People will watch it and talk about it, and people will be into it. But right now, that just doesn't do much for the studio that's trying desperately to save face around this movie. DC has kind of like overexerted their audience a little bit. I think their audience is just super frustrated. Like, I think it's just gotten to the point where the DC audience is just like, call me when you're rebooting. Like, we're just, like, I mean, seriously, like, it's gotten to the point where they've been through so much over this past decade plus, and
call me once you figured out your crisis.
Especially in the last couple years with all this, like, Black Adam stuff, and Henry Cavill's back, and now he's not, and now we got the reboot, and that, like, they're just done, man. Like, they're exhausted. They're ready to move on to something else.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm emotionally exhausted with DC.
Right, well, speaking of moving on to something else, shall we?
There we go.
I love a segue.
That's why he gets the big bucks.
Apple TV Plus has revealed details and some photos of its upcoming series, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. The series will continue Legendary's Monsterverse and will take place in the past and the present after the events of 2014's Godzilla. Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell will play the same character, but an older and younger version of him respectively in flashbacks. Will a father-son Hollywood powerhouse combo intrigue fans of the kaiju? Yeah, so this one kind of surprised me. I didn't really know anything about it until I saw it in our news document there, and I like the Legendary Monsterverse. I think it's had some highs and lows. I think the 2014 Godzilla was servable, but left a little bit to be desired. But I really, really enjoyed Kong Skull Island. So the fact that like this one's going to be doing some flashbacks and playing in what I suspect will be kind of a similar time frame, that excites me, and I do think the organization of Monarch has kind of been like the through line. It has been the Nick Fury for this universe, and it feels like this universe has just kind of like trudged along. Like they've, not all the films have received the best reception, but they're just like, no, we're committed, we're doing this, which I think, DC they could have taken a page out of their book, at least early on. And you even look at like Marvel Phase 1, like it was not as positively received as I think people tend to remember. So I think there's something to be said about, committing to your universe and just kind of, having that faith that things will shake out the way that they're supposed to. But on the other side of things, like I think we've talked a lot about how Apple TV Plus, like the quality is just there. So I think it makes sense for Legendary to want to partner with them. And the fact that Godzilla is going to feature prominently, that shows you where the budget for this thing's going. And I think Apple's just kind of flexing that money. They've been, there have been rumors about them potentially buying Disney, so I guess they have the bucks to spend there. But I'm pretty excited for this series, and I'm the only one.
Yeah, it's just you.
I've seen these movies, but it's been so like this is such a spread out IP. Like, I mean, you just mentioned 2014 Godzilla. Like, we're coming up on 10 years since this universe was introduced. But I think it's been relatively solid. It's been relatively well received for the most part. And I think if you're looking at a series that can explore the world a little bit more, it is interesting that they want to take it in that direction. I didn't really expect that we would see it on Apple TV Plus, I guess. Like, I didn't really catch that was going to happen, that Legendary would go and partner with Apple TV Plus to do that. But I think it's a good move if you're Apple. I mean, you've just wrapped up Ted Lasso. You're starting to see some of their core shows. There are being towards the end of their life a little bit, so I think you're looking at it and you're kind of saying, how are we going to draw in an audience that we don't have to our platform?
Ted Lasso versus Godzilla.
That's obviously where this is going. Yeah,
that's the crossover everybody never knew they wanted.
I never asked for.
Yeah, I didn't ask for this, but I'll take it. My knee-jerk reaction to these kinds of stories and these kinds of announcements, like especially in Godzilla and Kong and really all of the monster kaiju things, are like, how many different ways can you tell a story of big monster, destroy city, hurt people bad?
You're not going to those movies for the story or the characters.
No, it's absolutely not. But I will say, like, even with that thought of like, of course, like people love these things because like how many Godzilla movies have there been throughout the years, the decades? Like, this is not necessarily a type of story that's like tired and that people might be tired of, especially when you put like more nuance to it and more, like your Bryan Cranstons in it, your Tom Hiddlestons, your Brie Larsons, all of that. Like, you get those good big name actors in there and like, you're going to draw a crowd. So like, I think this might be a good thing for Apple TV Plus. Like Jay was saying, like after finishing Ted Lasso, like, that was a good thing, but like that's really the only thing that I know Apple TV for. So like, you got to bring them in with something else. Like, let's get them with that Godzilla. Come on.
I highly recommend you watch the show Severance if you need something on Apple TV Plus to watch.
I really don't need another streaming service.
Fair enough.
Especially with they're all going up in price. I mean,
oh God, all of them.
All right, now it's time for us to hear from the people. We've got our Spotify poll update.
All right, so we asked, are you going to see Blue Beetle this week? And, well, you probably already know how this is going to go. Only 36% of people responded yes, and our remaining 64% said no. And I thought that was interesting because, I mean, I expected it to be a little lopsided. I mean, obviously the numbers were low. That's going to be lopsided. But still, like, our audience is mostly into this stuff, you know? Like, mostly. So I expected, like, it maybe to be, like, a little higher than the average public, at least. But that's pretty lopsided.
The Stranded Panda brand is built on the MCU.
Yeah, the people have
built
spoken.
on the backs of the MCU.
And coupled with a not well-known character, it's just not surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, go watch Young Justice. Get some Blue Beetle
Yes.
action.
There you go.
Know what I'm saying?
A better version of the Scarab by far as well. We didn't really talk about Becky G, but, you know.
No spoilers.
Okay.
We can chat later, Scotty.
Okay. Sounds good.
After Ahsoka.
After Ahsoka. Like,
Let's wrap this up, though. Come on.
For sure.
Oh, God, I
For sure.
forgot.
Priorities.
We got to get through this.
We are
how
7
am I
minutes
still
past.
here?
All right. Well, in the sense of speeding things up and moving quickly, let's do just that with the lightning round. For those that might be listening for the first time, the way the lightning round works is that we go through a list of topics that we didn't have time to feature as main topics, and each one of us has the opportunity to buzz in with our name, and if we're the first ones, we get to speak on it, and everyone is afforded, usually, or not so usually, one rebuttal. We'll see how that shakes
I
out.
think Haley coined the term mini butt last week. A mini
Yes.
mini
Tiny butt.
rebuttal, tiny butt. Yeah, tiny rebuttal. So it's not your rebuttal. It's a tiny rebuttal.
It's a tiny bit.
But Ahsoka. So remember.
Yeah.
It's a Battini.
Dick Grayson wouldn't know anything about that for my DC fans.
Oh. Talk about Nightwing,
That's right.
the booty himself.
It's true.
Well, hold up. Let's get some butts up on the screen. Let's see.
We gotta compare.
Oh, God. Jay, don't. What are you doing asking the internet for things like that? God.
Email all of your DC butt pics to
To Animation Deliberation.
You just opened Pandora's box for the algorithm.
Pandora's butt.
Pandora's tiny butt.
Oof.
First up, we've got Netflix has released the trailer for the upcoming anime series Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. The series returns most of the cast from 2010's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in voice acting roles and will debut on November 17th. Scotty. Sorry, just taking this one. This was an awesome trailer. It did everything that it was supposed to do. It captured the look of the graphic novel, but also just totally captured the feel of that film from Edgar Wright. I don't think we heard any of the voice actors outside of the drummer that does the "We Are Sex Ba-Ba Moms," but you know it had that frenetic energy, and it just looks amazing. And we're going to talk about another trailer later, but this did it right. Like when you release a trailer, it needs to be like a certain length of time and not go on for too long. But, all right, and next we've got the fantasy series Warrior Nun, which was canceled by Netflix after 2 seasons, is set to return as a trilogy of films. The series has been the subject of a strong fan campaign to revive the show after its cancellation.
Jay, this was an extremely strong fan campaign to try to get this show back. People were really mad because Netflix has a habit of doing this, of putting a season or two out there and drawing in an audience. And it's probably not a big audience, which is why they get canceled. But this was one of those shows that got a really passionate audience to follow it, and then they canned it. And so people got mad like they do and went on the internet, and you had kind of a... I think this is just kind of the thing now. Like after the success of the put the Snyder cut on HBO Max or whatever, I think you will see a lot more successful movements like this because, for better or worse, I guess, but I think you will see a lot of fan empowerment to feel like that they can fight for series to come back that have been canceled. Some others come to mind that I don't know if they'll have the push, but like Willow has got kind of a push going on. People are pretty mad about that. You got the whole Air cut thing, but I think this is a good example of when a fan group can get together and try to bring something back. So I didn't really watch this show, but for people who are into it, more power to you. Enjoy your 3 movies.
You're gonna lose all the characters you care about. Does anybody remember Firefly?
We remember it.
Tiny butt. Chris Evans' girlfriend is the lead actress in this show.
That's why it got canceled. Too many haters. They'll get jelly.
I think that's why it's being brought back.
And we've got Blue Beetle barely dethroned Barbie for the #1 spot at the domestic box office this weekend, despite pulling in a lighter than expected $25.4 million domestically and $43 million globally. The film is one of the softest starts in the history of the DC cinematic universe.
Just you wait. Sorry.
I think what I would talk about with Haley, by the way,
Who?
is
There's no time for names.
shush.
Sorry.
Some other big box office news is how much money Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny are losing. They're both scheduled to lose like $100 million. And it kind of just pairs with our conversation about Blue Beetle. Like the budget wasn't as high as these other feature films, so are they technically making out okay? It's been a really weird summer for movies.
Tom Cruise got hit with that pink mushroom cloud. You know, you couldn't prep for that. Just Barbenheimer's gonna Barbenheimer.
Well, and that was the whole summer, like blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster, and then the Barbenheimer just could not be denied.
Yeah.
Disney has announced that several series previously available only on Disney Plus will be available for physical purchase, including The Mandalorian, Loki, and WandaVision. The physical media will include a Blu-ray set and extra features, including special making of clips, gag reels, and concept art. The titles will be available for pre-order beginning August 28th.
Jeff, I'm so excited. Like these series are, beloved, especially with the behind the scenes features and making of clips and whatnot, like especially in like WandaVision. I fully plan to deep dive into those and show you everywhere where Mephisto is, not is going to be, not was considered, is.
So tune in on Twitch when Jeff is going to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll my whiteboard in here and just be like, okay, listen.
It's like 6-hour Mephisto stream, It's
Would watch.
It's like that Charlie Day on the whiteboard thing where he's like got all the.
My hair is just gonna be super frazzled.
It's been 3 days.
He hasn't slept the entire time.
Someone needs to do a wellness check on that man. He hasn't slept.
His theories are starting to make sense, though, and that's the crazy part. Am I him?
I'll do a quick tiny butt here and just say it'll be interesting to see what the pre-orders look like come August 28th. Are these things going to sell out like that, go like hotcakes, or
I'm getting 2 of them.
Yeah, are you?
I don't know. 2 of each one. You got to keep one for the wall and one for watching.
There are people out there that have a shelf of like all the MCU Blu-rays, and they are and they're completionists, and they're so deeply mad that they can't put these series into the completionist, library. So good for them. You get a couple on the shelf.
Zoo of Animation Deliberation is a stalwart steelbook collector.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps sending me pictures every time he gets a steelbook. He's like, "Oh, look, it's so beautiful." And I'm like, "You're right, it is, but God, it's expensive."
I just put all my DVDs away. So I'm kind of like, shit.
I gotta get them back out.
I don't think these series were ever in danger of being, pulled from Disney Plus like Willow was. But if, like Jeff kind of alluded to, if Disney Plus does go by the wayside, these are, you're going to be glad you have the physical media.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell reunited in the first trailer for Good Burger 2. The first Good Burger premiered on Nickelodeon in 1997 and was a spinoff from Thompson and Mitchell's sketch routine on All That.
Man.
Scotty.
No, go ahead. I didn't even say my name, so you got it. I didn't play by the rules.
We talked offline that this was going to be a hit with all the 90s kids that had cable anyway. And,
Rude. So rude.
Sorry, I'm so
Personal
sorry.
attack.
Who could he be talking? Who's he?
Come after Jay Scotty.
I need aloe for that.
Who's he talking about?
I'm sorry. It was cruel. I'm sorry.
So uncalled for.
I'm sorry. But no,
help that she lives in Kansas.
I have a PBS household.
She watched Wishbone, and that was it. All right.
Reading Rainbow. She got Reading Rainbow.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, LeVar. LeVar. Come on, LeVar.
Come on. How you going to diss on LeVar like that?
Oh, God.
I don't know if we can come back from this one. So Jay, hopefully you have something insightful to say. But I loved all that growing up, and Good Burger was one of my favorite skits. I also loved Keenan and Kel, that show. And actually, I didn't realize until we covered this story that the movie premiered on Nickelodeon. For whatever reason, I recalled it being a theatrical release, but maybe that wasn't the case. But I'm kind of hoping that this is the rare exception in terms of sequels that come many years down the line and will actually recapture that magic while pushing the envelope. And I'm actually really happy for Kel Mitchell. Like, Kenan Thompson has enjoyed a lot of success, but Kel seems to have disappeared into another realm of the multiverse. So for him to be able to be back in the spotlight, I think is great.
And a little tiny butt here.
Sure.
The conversation we've had a lot on this show is how do you do nostalgia right? And it's a very specific formula. There's so many ways to do it wrong, and Hollywood does it wrong all the time. And they throw something at you and they think just because it's this guy who played this role and now he's in the role again, you're going to lap this up, or whatever. Like, they think we're going to love it and throw money at it. But really, that's not what people want. Like, they want to feel a certain way when they watch something nostalgic. So I think if you grew up in the 90s and you watched Nickelodeon, this has the potential to be that. But it's just, can they do it? Can they pull off that nostalgia factor without just being like, well, we're going to make it because you're going to watch it, right? Because you were a 90s kid or whatever.
You have money.
No.
You're going to give it to me. We know this.
You can't tell me what to do. I'll see it if I want to see it.
You're not my real dad.
You don't understand millennial culture? Get out of here.
You may have raised me, but you're not my real dad.
Yeah.
90s kid? Anybody get raised on TV? Just me? Cool. Got a little booster seat for you, though, Scotty.
Okay.
To raise up your tiny butt. Well, it probably felt like a theatrical release because you were younger. You were very much younger, sitting in the living room floor with the TV this big in front of your face. It feels like the cinema.
Sure.
It's the same thing, basically.
Yeah, just ask Martin Scorsese. Good Burger is cinema.
Yeah.
All right, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon released its first trailer today as well. The Netflix sci-fi film stars Sophia Boutella, Charlie Hunnam, Jimon Hansu, and Carrie Elways, among others. We'll see a princess try to stop a war, spaceships, lasers, and aliens in Snyder's concept that was originally pitched to Star Wars prior to the Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm.
Jay, man, like if you went to an AI bot and you said, I want you to generate a Zack Snyder Star Wars movie, this is the exact trailer that it would put out. But with that being said, this trailer was awesome. Like, I was really drawn in by this trailer. I thought it looked, it was very Zack Snyder. Like, if you're not into, like, Zack Snyder styles with, like, the slow motion and the camera pan and all that, like, and the big like scenes with explosions and slow falling dirt and all that. Like, if you're not into that, like, you're not going to like it probably. But I'm really intrigued by this, and what I'm most intrigued by is that it is a unique story, which is something that's so lacking in our content now of reboots and revivals and book to movie adaptations and all that type of stuff, like, which has its place, but like the idea of just this is a brand new unique source material story, that's really exciting to me.
I'll be quick with my rebuttal here. I made a snide comment earlier about a trailer that went on for a little bit too long, and it was this one. This one clocked in at like 3 minutes and 43 seconds. That is not a teaser trailer.
It is a little too long. Yeah. I'll give you that.
As the trailer began, like, I really felt the influence. Like, I think when Snyder pitched his Rogue One concept to Lucasfilm, he kind of like mentioned wanting to go back to like the films of Akira Kurosawa, who very much inspired Star Wars, and kind of do like a 12 Samurai type story. And I really felt those vibes initially, like seeing, the hand kind of gladiator style on the like reeds and the grass and whatnot. And I continued to really like it. I thought it had, a really nice aesthetic, and it was like very clearly Zack Snyder, but it felt like it was doing, something pretty artistic. And then I was like, okay, starting to look like, Kurosawa Star Wars meets Dune. And then the longer it went on, it was like, okay, like, this feels a little bit too much like Star Wars. Like, I'm seeing the red lightsabers and I'm seeing the blue lightsabers. And I was just like, okay, you should have just stopped at like a minute 30 or something like that, and I would have been over the rebel moon about this trailer. But as it is, I'm still excited about it, but I think they should have held back a little bit.
It's fair.
Wait, a Zack Snyder thing went on too long?
Did you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League?
I did.
4 hours in black and white.
I broke it up into 2 sittings, so it's kind of fitting that this one's being broken up into 2 films. All right, and our final lightning round entry, Kelsey Grammer reprises his iconic role of Frasier Crane in the revival series coming to Paramount Plus on October 12th. The streaming platform released official photos showing Frasier returning to Boston, where he first appeared in the long-running show Cheers, but without some of his Seattle castmates.
Jeff.
Jay?
Oh.
What? Jeff? You're going to trot on my Frasier? Go ahead.
Haley's cracking
You're the guest.
Haley's cracking her knuckles like she's ready to get after this
You're
story.
After
you can go ahead. The only thing I wanted to say is,
well, those are my sentiments as well. So, Frasier is one of my top 5 all-time favorite network TV shows. It's on my rotation that my husband and I just watch shows at night, and it's Frasier, The Office, and Parks and Rec. And I literally, to quote Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec, hate the idea of this revival. John Mahoney, who played Kelsey Grammer's dad, is dead. His dog has been dead for centuries at this point, basically. And David Hyde Pierce, who plays his brother, declined to come back to the show. And the Frasier Niles brother thing, is part of what made the show so wonderful. And
right.
I'm like, to show my level of loserdom, I'm in a Frasier fan Facebook group, so whatever, come at me. And everyone's like, no. No. And I love Kelsey Grammer. He's had a really tragic life. If you know anything about his life or just look him up, he's had a lot of horrible things happen to him throughout his life. He played Beast in X-Men, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about.
Was that one of the horrible things?
No. No, you'd feel bad if you knew.
Because I think it was.
But I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm sad.
If ever there was an instance of nostalgia gone wrong, harping on or picking at nostalgia, ooh, this'll get us money.
Yeah.
It's this.
He's literally played this character in 3 television shows already.
Yeah.
If he's good for it, let him do it on TikTok videos and people will love it.
Kelsey, just go to your brewery, brew your beer, live your amazing life and retirement, and but here we are. They have already done it. It's done.
Sometimes holding back the revivals can actually get the fan base more invested in your property. I think Friends is a good example. Friends could have done a revival probably. I mean, they probably had the opportunity to do that. I know those cast members are making bank basically when their contracts, but they could have done it. And I think the fan base really said, we don't really want a Friends revival. We kind of like what happened with it, and we're kind of cool with it the way it ended. So they did the Meat special or whatever on HBO, and people watched that. It was one of HBO's most viewed things the year that it came out. So I think when you're looking at that as an example, I think a lot of series can take that as a good example, or you could look at some of these other revivals that have kind of fallen flat on their face a little bit from these beloved shows. They typically don't really work out, is what we've seen.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't have Paramount Plus, so I'm not watching it.
Hey, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Toss salads and scrambled eggs. That's all I got.
Those eggs are rotten at this point.
No doubt.
All right. Well, this was a fun edition of Multiverse News. Thank you all for being here. Let's go around the proverbial horn and let the people know what else we have going on. Mr. Jeff Randall, thank you for being here. Where can people find you elsewhere if they don't already know?
Check us out at the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. Everywhere you listen to podcasts. We are actually we're on the slate right now for the podcast awards at podcastawards.com. We are on the slate for TV and film. If you are someone who has gone on to nominate shows and selected the checkbox to tell me or send me the request to vote, I will vote. If you volunteered, that's the word I'm looking for. Check your email to see what the instructions are for voting on that, and we need everybody to get behind us and vote for us.
Very cool. All right, and Haley.
Well, Brian and I saw Blue Beetle and we both very much enjoyed it. So if you want to hear us talk about the movie and the comics we read before, we just dropped that episode literally tonight. It's available now when you're listening, and that's Source Pages, where we read comics and novels as primers to all the geeky TV shows and movies you love. And Ahsoka's up next.
And Mr. Sassoon.
Yeah, you can find me on Commute the Podcast, a weekly educational show where we try to cover 3 interesting things in 20 minutes or so. It's something perfect for you to listen to in the car on the way to work or wherever you go.
Awesome. As for me, I want to mention Animation Deliberation. That's the podcast that takes action, animation, and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously, with a special reminder that episode that Haley mentioned, where she and Zuhair basically gave you a roadmap to understanding everything you need to know about the character of Ahsoka before going into the series. Check that out. And I also had the opportunity to appear on Bill and Ashley's Terror Theater to talk about the A24 horror film Talk to Me, and that was a lot of fun. That's available wherever you get podcasts now. And not until next time. It's just
Wow.
You stay classy, Multiverse.
Until next time, true believers.
It feels weird.
No, it's not right.